Weaving like DNA strands on a fascinating roller coaster of endless learning, experimentation, and discovery of technology, where the destination is not the end and the journey is the most fun. This is the Helical Brew, with your hosts, Mike, Sura, Jeff, and Ellie.
Well, hey, everybody. It's Mike Ouren here back again for the now named podcast. We actually figured out a name, or at least for now. You never know, right? We might decide to change it. And we only offered up the comment section suggestions in our first episode, which we just published. If you haven't watched that, it's now available to download. We are on Spotify under Helical Brew. That's our name, Helical Brew. You can look us up with that name on both iTunes and Spotify podcasts. So we're going to be hosted there. The next thing we'll do is probably move to YouTube to have another video platform to be able to broadcast on, and we'll create a channel named Helical Brew, but we haven't quite done that yet. If you want to watch the video podcast, Spotify is the way to do it. Currently, with the RSS feeds coming out of Spotify, it does route directly to iTunes, which makes my life easier because all I have to do is press the button for publish to Spotify, and it automatically publishes to iTunes without me having to do anything else, except it doesn't take the video feed. And of course, that's just Spotify's wants to be the center of attention here, which is fine. I like the Spotify platform, and it's becoming more and more popular for podcasts. So thank you for joining us again. This is episode 2, and in the tradition we started in the first episode, we'll name our episodes based on maybe a keyword or a topic or a theme that comes up in the podcast. So we'll figure out what that is later after we review the podcast. But welcome again, and thank you for joining us on Helical Brew. I want to start check in with everybody, our hosts. First, starting with Elizabeth in Ontario, Canada. How you been?
I'm good, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm very
I
good.
see that you are enjoying the Europe trip, so that's nice.
Thank you. Yeah. I guess I have been posting a bit here and there. It's always an opportunity to go enjoy Europe whilst doing some work at the same time. I feel lucky for that. Currently coming to you from yet another hotel room. If you didn't notice in the last episode 1, I was doing that from Salt Lake. Now I'm doing it from Utrecht, Netherlands, in Holland here, very close to the train station and the Yarbers Center. For those that are familiar, Utrecht actually has the largest, most sophisticated train station in the Netherlands compared to everything. So Amsterdam's that's the main city. No, it's the oldest train station, I think, in all of Amsterdam. So it's certainly not the highest traffic one. But welcome back, Elizabeth. Glad we're now getting a routine here. And in episode 2, we can begin to polish, the broadcast here a little bit and figure out what we're talking about. And I think we're going to have an interesting topic. But before we get to the topic, let's check in with you, Jeff. How you been?
Hey, Mike. Well, obviously, I'm not as a world traveler as you are this week, but things are good.
Hey, but you're not jet lagged like I am either.
No,
So.
I'm not.
Not a bad thing.
A police song comes into my mind when I think of you lately. It's the man in the
which one?
suitcase. The man in the suitcase.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. No, things are good. Things are good. Family life, keeping busy with all the extra stuff that has to come along with doing what we do,
Right on. Well, I'm glad we can all make time to do this because I'm loving it.
I do too. I love it.
And this is great. That's awesome. Sura, bringing us in from the West Coast. How you doing?
Good, I'm doing well. Sunny San Diego,
Yeah.
so can't be better.
Always sunny San Diego. It's coming up in San Diego. Actually, I think you're the closest to it. We got El-Rig coming up in San Diego. The new San Diego El-Rig. I don't know if you know, it's got new management.
Yes, there's a new group managing, and I saw that there are still spots that are available for exhibitors as well as registrants. So if anyone wants to attend, it's October 8th. So I think that's going to be an exciting meeting, as well as I'm going to Boston in October as well, October 10th for the LRAG in New England. So that event
Right
is
on.
always sold out. It's going to be very busy and lots of events happening around that time as well. So very excited.
There's also
Awesome.
one in the Bay Area on October 3rd, Elrig.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
So lots of activities.
A lot of LRIG. In fact, if you're a vendor, it's a little tough if you wanted to go to both, unless you've got a team on both sides of the country. But LRIG is traditionally a localized community, which makes sense. It's focused on bringing people together in the region that it's serving, and depending on, I think you might be able to take credit, Elizabeth, for the LRIG you're involved with. I think it's the biggest geographical LRIG area
Yes.
on the planet.
Yes, we are covering quite a big territory, and now we're preparing as well, like just a little hint that we will have in fall some socials in Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. So we are going to get the community again together. It's just, to network and make sure that everybody continues to be engaged. And then hopefully after that, we will have, a good attendance in Vancouver for our meeting. That is going to be in June 3rd.
Excellent. Well, looking forward to that and getting back up to Canada. I had a great time up in Montreal in the last event there. And I was going to ask you all, did you get the new email or the new newsletter from Andy?
Yes.
Andy Zanga.
So that's a new
that was pretty
initiative as
cool.
well that together with the marketing group that they put together for the global LRAG, which Joyce is involved with, they are putting together a newsletter and, getting every chapter aligned with the big strategy of LRAG, as well as getting notified of all the events. And we're going to be having a new website as well. So lots of work over there, but I think they're doing an amazing job keeping the community together and still maintaining that free membership so everybody can be part of the different chapters and attend, and as well, like companies that are vendors, that they can help sponsor those chapters so it continues to grow.
Yeah, it definitely
That's
feels
great.
more cohesive.
Yes, it's a big initiative, and I think this year has been a lot of work for them. But all the chapters are now informed and aligned with the bigger strategy of LRAG Global.
It's really great to see it come together like that. I know it's a lot of work, and it's volunteer work.
Yes,
primarily.
everything is volunteer work.
It's a volunteer job, and it's really great that a lot of folks have stepped up and done that. And I've tried to participate in as many LRIG events as I possibly can, or I have the bandwidth for, just to support that end of it, because there's some very interesting discussions that have happened at LRIG events. I mean, on par with some of the bigger show, gathering organizations like SLAS. And here in Europe, the ELRIG is a really big thing.
That one is coming soon.
French-speaking, German-speaking, and also, that's right, the compound screening event that's going to happen in the UK next week. So lots going on, and the countdown to SLAS is not far away. So we're going to be diving right into that. And speaking of SLAS, speaking of LRIG, and probably one of the most common topics, I think, I wouldn't say common, but I think strongest topics, let's put it that way, in terms of, points of view, but also just the kind of changes that some of these standardization efforts mean to not only software companies, but also for end users, and where those are, where those driving forces are coming from. And I thought we would look at some of those driving forces today in terms of, standardization, who's asking for it the most, what are the reasons for that, what are we seeing in terms of, deliverables as far as standardization, because a lot of this does depend on vendor participation, as we've seen so often. It does require participation by the users, but I think most of the workload, and let me know if you disagree. It seems like most of the workload resides with the vendors, and not always do you have cases where the interests are aligned in that. And why don't we start with one of the standardization groups that started right around the time when I got back into the industry, started working for Precise 2014. I think they were founded a bit before that, but Sila as maybe a starting point for discussion around automation standardization, but a lot of vectors we can take this conversation, as we all know, for data, specifically data from certain types of instruments and whatnot. But I figure maybe start with you, Sura, on your thoughts or just some things that come to mind when we talk about Sila.
Yeah, it's probably best not to start with me because I'm starting to think about the different standardization buckets that are available out there. And there's a lot that are vendor heavy. There's also some that you can do vendor agnostic, depending on, what you can get around best practices for your team and your approach before you engage with hardware or vendor. So maybe I can be last.
Okay, fair enough. I'm looking forward.
Way to tee it up, Sura. Way to tee that one up. I can't wait. So when we talk about standardization, and this was something that we hit on in the first episode, like we said, that's a whole nother episode, and here we are. On the Sila front, I just want to now I'm not a code jockey by training, but I interact with them often, and as well as customers, so I see it from both sides. And what I see is not a global acceptance of said standard, at least for this one. You talked about vendors as well being on board, with everyone coming together in this star chamber type thing and saying, all right, everybody, let's set this down and say all of our devices, all of our instruments are going to communicate in this way, and we're going to establish this standard going forward. The governing body will accept that. This is what it's going to look like. It felt like, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Again, I wasn't part of the initialization of that getting started. It seemed like the standard was created, and now you're trying to sell the solution over here. It's not started over here, and then the governing body was created from that. It's kind of the reverse process. And it's almost like, okay, did they think that their process in general was unique? While vendor instruments are, in the sense of how they open up API, what the APIs look like, how you communicate with them, how many instruments or softwares can communicate with them at a single time. It almost felt like it was created in a vacuum, and I wish that would change. Add to that a little bit, I think one of the bigger problems is educating people. If I go out and try to find videos, yes, they exist. YouTube has 40 billion videos, but if I try to find something specific on a standard that I'm trying to find that is easily explained, not in a super technical jargon type way, I don't think people understand it. That's why there's such pushback on, like, well, no one's asking me for this. I don't have customers who are asking for the integration of my software. Well, is it all Sila? We want Sila. Okay, well, the question is why? If you're the only one asking, where's the benefit for us to develop our software with that standard?
Right. And that seemed to be, there was this wave. I remember when Sila first came out, Sila 1, right, for example, just to take Sila. Sorry, Sila, if it feels like I'm picking on you, but yes, I'm picking on you right now. So my apologies. No, they're a great organization. I remember, and I visited with them over in Switzerland and whatnot. But it's more about, and I think they recognize this. It's why they kind of refined it and came up with Sila 2, because Sila 2 had a lot of the feedback from the vendors that was, Sila 1 was largely done in a vacuum, as you just said. And I think that was one of the main areas of pushback. A lot of people signed up for it, and then a lot of people left at the same time. I remember the list was pretty much everybody, and then the list was cut in half within a few years. They're like, I'm not going to really pay into this if I can't see any, real benefits, and I'm not getting asked very much.
Right.
And again, getting asked makes a big difference. And I think it's a really great point there, Jeff, about that. Speaking of getting asked, Elizabeth, I have to imagine that comes up frequently on the commercial side of selling software, right? I mean, and you guys have implemented some of the Sila, or a lot of the Sila components for the instruments as they've come up over time. Because there are now, in all fairness, instruments that are being built specifically on Sila,
Right.
Especially in Europe. It's like that. There's only one type of driver, so you're going to have to make the software talk Sila. But once you do, does that make life easier for your team now that that's been done?
Like Jeff was saying, it's not like we get lots of requests for that. So we developed the driver for the specific device that is using Sila, but there is another platform that is basically built on a standard that any device that is using Sila will be able to connect to that platform. And that's a lot more work to develop, but I think that's what they are pushing right now. And as you said, Europe is big on this Sila topic. I know that they're going to be having a roundtable or a conversation with the people that are attending at ELRAG in UK. They will have some special roundtable about Sila. And that is interesting to, I was also requesting if we can get some access from here to webinars or those meetings that they have so we can learn more about it as we go, because it's something that needs to be really well understand from our side, from the integration perspective. And of course, like if it's going to make things easier, because in the future, the idea is that any Sila device will just connect to that platform, that it's part of your software. And that will be really an ideal scenario for us. So we don't have to develop drivers for each of the devices. But
is
from
it going
now,
to be the lab automation version of Windows Plug and Play, Windows 95? No. No.
Well, I think that the industrial automation already has a platform that is kind of
Yep.
standard for them.
Vendors have come to their same roundtable. Took a while, but they finally came to the table. Sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's great to hear that they're gonna that's coming together. And I'm not shocked. I mean, this is 10 years since I started working at Precise and first heard about Sila. So it's pretty amazing how that's come together at this point. So very cool to hear that.
We should maybe introduce Sila to some of our viewers that aren't familiar.
I agree. Let's get into a little more detail. Yeah. Anyone? Any volunteers?
I mean, before we do that, though, I think I agree with what Jeff said. Right? There's a lot of best practices that came out of this, right? To understand like that you can't really think and build these standardizations and guidelines and deploy them to the masses without actually like getting some feedback and some input on how to build it or what's needed. Otherwise, it won't get used, right? And developing anything in a vacuum is kind of asking for feedback that allows you to build and iterate again that you could have gotten the first time around to put forward a better product. So that delay is unfortunate. But also it's great to know that they're looking for that feedback. The only other thing that I would say to Jeff's point is to have a knowledge database that, it's available to everyone where you can find the information that you need readily and more available than going on YouTube and hoping that a fellow colleague somewhere in the world has uploaded the information that you need. So I think there's a lot of learnings that we can take from how that was, deployed to the masses to do anything else in the future a little bit better.
Yeah, if you're going to, we'll hit your first bullet there. Sila-standard hold on, it's on my phone. I had it just up. .com that will take you there. So this is not an endorsement. It's just that's the location to find it. So you can dig around in there to find all the information you might want, or at least like to dig around.
But it's a lot and very hard
It's
to navigate.
Yeah, it's a challenge for sure. I'd like to hit on what Elizabeth was talking about, and I can speak from where we are. Our group has developed their own internal methodology on how they construct drivers. And we've built our platform based on that. So when we put together new drivers, we don't have that for that device, something new or whatever. They now already have a standard in place, again, internal organic, that we've constructed, which makes it simple for us to put together. Now you try to come back and say, oh, well, we have this other thing. Are you going to reconstruct or refactor your entire software base based on that? I know you can have both. Okay, I get it. But you spend a lot of activation energy. Harken back to episode 1. Check it out on Spotify. Nice plug, right?
Shameless plug.
Thumbs up. But you spend all that time and energy to create your own standard in how you want your software to operate. But then this other thing comes along and you're like, well, I can't afford that energy to do that. So that's another thing to consider when we talk about these standards. And there are others, which I hope we get to.
And also, like building on that, if you're a manufacturer, I mean, an instrument manufacturer, and already have all your devices and APIs there and released, how easy, or not easy, but what is that process to go and build still on top of that or change what you already have? So it's a lot of also work and planning for instrument manufacturers to actually adopt that standardization.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll just iterate something that from somebody who's really early on in the Sila, what they told me, said about kind of if one way to think of it at least is if you think about life science research organizations and the sheer number of vendors that they have to purchase from to build something useful within their facilities to be able to conduct that research, it's way more than, let's say, a home, you buy audio equipment, computer equipment, right? Let's see, doing production. I mean, these are spaces I've worked in. And I can stick with 1 or 2 or 3 brands of things, Apple computers, Blackmagic video production tools, Rode, headphones and microphones and things like that. But when it comes to life science research, you have to deal with a lot of different things. And to make all those things talk to each other and use those devices with scheduling software like Genera, you have to write drivers. It's unlike any process I've seen out in kind of the industrial commercial world, because there is so much standardization in the industrial world that you really are doing a lot more work in general on integrating equipment in a way that's useful to users. And I think that was where the Sila organization came from, was the users are like, throwing the book down. Let's fix this. Let's work on this so that when I call one vendor, they say, oh, no, we don't play nice with that other vendor, and this vendor, and that vendor, right? And I realized very quickly robots have very little to do with standardization like this. Robots are their own thing, but this is truly about device and data integration when it comes down to it. Anyway, that's my little Switzerland passing on this view I heard in Switzerland about Sila.
But you touched on a good point, right? Because when we're building these systems, we have workflows in mind, and we pick the different peripherals and robots and scheduling software with that in mind, right? So that we can deploy these workflows successfully. And it's very frustrating when you have a need and a certain vendor is going to work really well for that need, only to hear back, oh, I can't actually provide you that API, or no, we don't play nice with this, system that you're trying to build. You're basically, making sure that we don't have your business, and that's a problem. And so we need to get to the point where it's somewhat available and free for us to build whatever the mind comes up with to innovate towards that direction and have vendors be, mindful of working with other vendors. It's never going to be in all one vendor shop, right? Unless you're really looking at a closed system and you're only doing one thing over and over and over again, which some companies do.
No, there.
Right.
I'm sorry, Mike. There is some brand loyalty, but to both of your points, it's limited. It's not like we're buying Tide laundry detergent because I love Tide. No, it doesn't matter. I need it to get the job done, honestly, and whatever is the least amount as far as dollar figure and can do what I need it to do, that's what I'm going with. I love that point you made, Sura, as far as communication or cooperation is the better word between third-party software vendors and the vendors themselves. You could be device agnostic, which some companies are when it comes to software. It doesn't matter. I'll communicate with anything. But you even get, because they may have a software product that you've written, but you don't have devices. So they are a little bit protective of, yeah, we're not going to release this API. Well, thanks. So you're not going to get us a device sale. Now we can't write the software that they want from us. So it's a lose-lose for both of us. Thanks a lot. And it's crazy. I mean, where's the sense of collaboration between these companies? I get it. Everything's a competition and everyone wants a market share. But you would think, hey, there's still a win for us here. Collaborate together. You may not win that software. I'm not going to go for the hardware because that's not my area of expertise. You get the hardware, I'll get the software, win-win, customer win, period, end of story.
Yeah, I think I'm coming from a utopian thought process of, my goal is innovation. And it's always, I have to remember, right? Oh, they're thinking about the sale, or there is that component, the monetary value. So how do we get to that place where we can both surge ahead while still maintaining our IP and our market share, right? There's got to be more of these like co-developments or collaborations to achieve that, just to drive the whole process forward, right?
Yeah. It really takes a vision at a high level to be able to implement, I think, an environment, let's just call it that, an environment at some of the larger organizations. It's very hard to navigate when you're on that side of things. It's very hard to navigate. I was in a very large company, pretty much the largest company in this industry, and interdivision activity is very often more difficult than you would think, just because you're automatically in tunnel vision mode in many cases, and it's not anyone's necessarily fault, but it takes leadership. It takes the vision at a higher level to be able to see that vision of where we are, our biggest value is offered. I think the perceptions don't match reality when it comes to value offering in a lot of these situations. They think, oh no, we're not going to give that up. We have that, and that doesn't help the standardization conversation either.
No.
that makes it worse. In fact, I won't name names, but I know companies that actually charge for their API, and I'm not talking a small amount of money. I'm talking about a significant amount of money to access the device externally. So that says something right there.
Well, this is where I think, forget a standard that's written. Let's look at standards that have been created that are outside of our industry already. I just think about Open Endpoint API through browser connection. That existed long before vendors started building their devices, essentially. Why can't endpoints like that be opened up? You can create a whole bunch, from software to maybe all the vendors get together and say, yeah, that makes sense. Let's create some open-end APIs, RESTfuls, and provide them, whatever they are. They're easily accessed. I don't have to write some crazy special stuff, those types of things. And that standard's already been placed. Thank you, Tim Berners-Lee, for putting that together. But why not do that? That's another standard that's outside your industry. You're not trying to recreate the wheel again.
Totally. Yeah, the RESTful concept is really cool. I've seen that implemented with scheduling software, and it works really well.
Yeah.
If you know what you're doing.
Yeah, and devices in this industry in and of themselves don't report information of their devices. So by what I mean by that is, Mike, from a PLC, Sura, PLC, that's just giving me information. I can attach a tag to that PLC at that endpoint and say, oh, it's giving me a value on constantly reporting. If I want to get something off of devices in our industry, even if it's just, hey, I need to know an air pressure, I've got to send a command to that. It's not reporting it. I have to send the command to that, therefore locking communication to it until that returns and it's released again. I would rather see devices that have that capability of, I'm just reporting information, pull what you need off of me type of stuff. And if you do have to run a method on a liquid handler or something like that, fine, send that to me. I'll do those particular tasks inside my internal logic. So,
yeah. I just feel like we're definitely stunting this industry by being so protective of things on this high level. There's a lot of other industries that have reached a level of standardization that allow this kind of freedom of communication and ability to actually utilize their hardware efficiently. But because this industry maybe is new or protective, or there's science, so there's like a higher association of IP. I'm not sure what it is, but I think it's slowing progress down. And we need to get to a point where we all come together and think of, like you said, how do we get to that place and how do we all agree on what's acceptable, right?
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
I was thinking of our manufacturing, and you talk about the standard. They came together, said this is a standard. Well, based on that standard, all these other other industries that serve to that standard started cropping up. And now that industry as a whole has all these people to choose from. Why not?
That's exactly what I was thinking, manufacturing.
Yeah. And they have that capability. We can establish a communication for our little box that does this based on that standard. And everybody could use that. Perfect. Okay. We're solving problems and we're innovating and moving forward.
And you're not putting the onus on like the end user, right? Because why do I have to figure out how to work with your hardware? Like that should be something that we've all agreed on, a standard that we can come together and deploy to everyone, right?
Yes.
Mike looks like he's in thought.
It's about to fall asleep.
Just plugging the phone in so it doesn't die. Had to go into parallel thought mode. No, I find that I think the device standardization, the device communication standardization, is at least come far enough to where we're talking about it on a regular basis. It's being used on a regular basis. The one area that seems to pop up more often than anything else lately, and this is for I think a variety of reasons with what's going on with large data, AI, manipulation, also working with data in the cloud. Sometimes these data sets are so large, you only can store them in the cloud, but you need to do work on the data. So how do you do that? It's cool, these services that have come out for being able to, like, literally a programming environment that's for data in the cloud is pretty amazing. It's allowing companies to make use of this cloud data without constantly transporting it back and forth from local to remote, which I get it. That totally makes sense that you don't want to tie up bandwidth just to copy something down, do something with it, then send it back up to the cloud. Which, that in and of itself is fascinating, but it leads to data standardization, right? How do you deal with all this data? How do you move this data with the amount that's being generated, especially with the imaging, cellular imaging, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, the amount of data that some of these companies, Recursion as an example, out of Salt Lake City, that's their business, right? They generate data out of those imagers, and I think they're mostly IXMs. It's just, one after another. They've got a huge internet connection leading into that building to get it up there, and they're able to offer that data and sell access to that data to pharma companies to use in their processes. And any thoughts on data standardization and how that's affecting or how that's coming online, let's say, in the industry?
Well, you talk about images. That's definitely a unique thing. Um, I'm not familiar with all the standards as far as what those produce.
Yeah, I don't know much myself either. Yeah.
So it's kind of like, all right, well, what is the end product of it? Is it the image itself? Well, or is it you talk about cells, I need to look at the individual parts of the overall image. So now we're going a step further down the pipeline as far as looking at the cells themselves, not the overall image. But as far as data that's pumped out, the JSONs, the XMLs, those types of things, those standards have been around for a little while. So again, what does the data coming off of instruments look like? Everyone seems to create their own, and how do you parse that? So that again presents issues for software vendors who are sort of third party on the outside trying to integrate these devices. How do we parse that data if we're asked to do so? Oftentimes it's no, I'm not going to recreate that vendor's wheel. I'm just going to tell it to do something. You can save that data somewhere else and evaluate that in their software because they've already taken care of that. But you may be asked to figure out what to do with that. And I've had customers write their own JSON parsers in a particular software package. Excuse me. And they had the power to do it, thank goodness. But I mean, how do you decide, right? That's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta ask you, Elizabeth, how often do you need to connect, or how often do you get requests from customers to connect to a data management system for projects? Is it more than half, less than half?
I don't know, Jeff. I think probably more than half we're dealing with some sort of data communication. And that is something that, as a vendor, that you want to have that conversation from the very beginning. Like, how do you manage your data and what do you want to do with it? Sometimes, we use that data to make decisions as well during the run. So we need to have inputs from that data to know if Genera has to take certain action for the system or not. But one thing that I know for sure is that there are so many different approaches to managing the data. So there's a lot of internal development that a lot of companies have their own LIMS or data management systems. So it's so customized, it's not standardized as well. And when I was in SLAS Europe, I was impressed because I was seeing a lot of companies that are now building like out-of-the-box solutions for data management, LIMS, and all these, cloud-based management that I didn't see before that many companies. I think now it's a need in the market that, the more out-of-the-box, per se, you can get, and then us as vendors have those plugins that can communicate to those databases. So there's not a lot of customization as well being made in the process of automating the data handling part.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, yeah. That piece sounds like a recipe. Like when you said customization at customers or having their own custom limbs.
Yes.
While that makes a ton of sense from their point of view, I just feel like for the general industry, that's got to be a real pain, like an IT project every time to get a new vendor on board. Now, let's say you've done 2 projects with them, hooked into their limbs, you've got that under your belt. But, first timers, that's yet another piece of software or yet another standard. Although maybe I don't even know, but I mean, maybe they're also part of the group that's saying, you got to standardize this. We'll use a standard. That's fine. Just let's create a standard so we're all using the same thing. I mean, I could totally see that as well. But, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the mentality.
How about you, sir? Sorry.
No, go ahead, Sura. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's fine. I was just thinking, data standardization is one of those things, as you've all alluded to. It's a little bit hard, right? Because the vendors are thinking about ways that they can standardize so that they can make what they're offering work for everyone. But then you get to the customer side and, you know, customers are doing something different and want something different for their own workflows. And I've been at a lot of companies that are always, you know, very excited about this homegrown solution. The problem is it's homegrown and it can't ever really grow beyond that, because you do hit that ceiling of like the person with the knowledge leaving, or, you know, they just don't know enough to get to the next space, or you want to integrate like an ELN and now you're worried about like, where's the information going and how do you tie those two things together? So there's a lot to be said to work with vendors who it's their business to make this work, right? Instead of scientists and software developers like at companies. On the other hand, you have, you know, real needs at companies, and they know what they want, and they know what they want to look at and how to manipulate data. So from my viewpoint, the best thing that you can do to make that level of curiosity happen on the customer side is to allow for your data to be accessible, right? And a lot of the things that we've encountered in the past are, you know, we hit a roadblock when we can't take something from the output of a machine to actually do what we need to do in terms of analysis on it. And one of the things that really got us excited in working with a vendor like Dynamic Devices, for example, is, you know, everything is available because of the way that they output their data, right? And that allows us to do a lot more with it, right? And I think that's what's important, is how do you provide the information in a manner that's not just, I have to use your GUI to view what I want to view, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a great
point.
pitch
Go ahead,
too. When you go to sell, if that's the case, it's like, well, no, we've partnered with this company, and look at all they've provided, and now the customer's going, wow, I didn't know that could be accessed. Yeah, so here we are. We've accessed it. Is this valuable to you? That's one of the hard parts to get over. You kind of mentioned it, Mike. You did too. You've got a silo here, a silo there, and then the proverbial, well, that's the way we've always done it. That happens in this industry often. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. Change is hard in this industry for sure.
Yeah, people definitely will silo things, including the software silo is, to me, the worst one, where I can only work with a device using a very specific licensed piece of software that is, you know, I feel like you're definitely on rails at that point. And yeah, I was at a customer the other day, and they had 10 PCs. I asked them, I said, could you count out how many PCs you have for this one system? The robot was on a rail, so it was a decent size, like a 1 meter rail. It's still 10 PCs. 10 PCs. Some of the things were embedded, but, you know, by the time you added up the, you know, imagers and, you know, different PC-driven devices that didn't have their own internal computer capability or had to have a screen, that's, you know, 10 PCs means 10 screens too. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I mean, power goes out, that UPS is going to go down pretty quick. Yeah.
But it's just sad to hear that, like, you have to have a license and then you still don't get all the information that you need, you know?
No.
And I think this is where
right.
my mind comes to, like, you're, again, like, stunting innovation in the field, because we were able to use such great software that had data accessible to us. My team at Resilience was able to open source, you know, something that we built, RoboLint, to allow automation engineers to be aware of errors in programming and other caveats of the code that we were able to publish to LinkedIn to other automation engineers in the industry. Now anyone can use that. Like, that kind of drive is what we need to move ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about the community as well, and we are trying to promote a forum where we can share different ideas and applications, and to understand as well how the user is interacting with the software. And I think that concept comes from, you know, an idea that Jeff had based on another vendor from another industry, that really they promoted that community when they could bring even different vendors, different users of their product, and have really conversations between them and allow them to exchange ideas. Even doesn't matter if they are selling or competing in their market. What they want to know is how you are using our product, how can we improve it, and what else can we bring to you to make your life easier. So that idea and concept is also part of what we are doing, and goes together with our partnership approach, because we are providing the tools to our partners to be able to automate and not just, recreate the same thing. It takes a lot of work to create a scheduling software. Like, it's a heavy lift on our side to support the drivers and the code and everything else. But as well, we want to partner up with companies that can give us the feedback and see what else is needed. And with that, hopefully standardize a lot of things that can be used, like plugins that can be used with other software, like data handling software or LIMS, or also devices. So that is something that we are very heavy, and this year we've worked a lot on that.
Yeah, and I'd like to really give a shout out to ReadySoft, because I've known Elizabeth for a number of years, and we've brought ReadySoft into a number of companies that I've been at, and they've always been so open to sitting down and talking about ideas to do different things with their software and add different functionality that has actually helped a lot of the workflows that I've developed in my 22 years of experience doing this. I think we deployed the first hands-free colony picking protocol because they were so involved in meeting our needs with that conversation. And I appreciate that so much about companies like this, ReadySoft especially.
Yeah, I do believe that the
Use your
conversations...
testimonial right there.
Thank you, Sura. You're awesome. No, we did work for many, many years. Also, Sura had experience with so many different equipment, and that is so valuable to see, because we get the feedback from people using all these different devices, and that it has allowed us to build into the software as well where we are today. But we want also to really foster that community, because education for us and to build something like that that gives extra value to the customer. It's not just selling them a system, a robot. It's really connecting with them, partnering up with them, and that long-term partnership that you build is what is going to take that solution to be a successful solution. As well as we know, and one of our engineers always repeats that you have to understand their workflow, because automating anything doesn't really means that you're going to get good data. You have to polish that and make sure that you connect with them and understand what their goal is. And a well-designed workflow, it's really going to generate the data that they need, not just any data that later on they're going to be struggling to even understand, and it's going to be useless.
100%.
But
we need more of these conversations at SLAS would be a good forum. LRIG is a good forum. It'd be nice to have. We need to get to a place where we all get together and decide how to move forward together. I'd like to see that cohesiveness a little bit more.
One of the things I really enjoy about my role, and I do work with Elizabeth, so full transparency, but one of the things I like about my role is educating the customer and teaching them how to fish with the software. I don't want to give them a fish. I want to give them a rod and show them how to fish. Therefore, they get involved in it. They take ownership of the software. And we also have inside the software how you create a standard on what a dialog box might look like. Or, hey, do you understand where this comes from? Well, you can create your own standard based on the standard we have inside User Guide. So I really enjoy that, because I love light bulb moments when that happens for them. And then they just take off, and it's like this for sure. I love that part.
Yeah. No, I kind of wish we had a forum, something similar, because it sounds like you've created a forum where potentially one partner could learn from the other partner, because the software is being used very often in a self-deployed, experienced user case, right? So they know, like, oh, we've done this before, we can do it again with this one. Have some questions along the way, or want to do something new that they've never done with the software before, be able to go back to a forum and learn from, oh, well, looks like this, whoever this is done something similar to what I want to do, and you can learn from that as you're going along. I think with, you know, in the robot world, there's, you know, each implementation is very much, at least for us, is very much unique to the software approach and what they're doing, right? They may not want to use 80% of the features of the robot because 20% are getting the job done. Why add that complexity and pass it along to their user? So I'm always about optimize for your use case when it comes to robotics, because, you know, when I started in robotics, we had teach pendants the size of the screen inside of a Tesla, except it wasn't a touch screen.
Yep.
It was a little LCD screen with about 500 buttons on it. Try to teach somebody how to use that within a week. Good luck.
Or teaching took a week, so.
Yeah, teaching took a week, so I need you to come back next week. Enjoy your weekend in South Carolina at the time. And go down to Charleston. I'll see you back next week. We'll write our first program. Yeah, that kind of thing. It just gets over the top, and you start adding up all the stuff you need to know. And there's some math involved too. Why don't we put some, you know, college level calculus in there too, and vector math to be able to do some of the things. But it's vector math, right? Linear algebra right here in your robot course. Yep. Did you ever guess you'd be doing that again? I should have paid attention in that class.
You're using the degree you have and more degrees you don't have.
Yeah. I didn't think I'd use dip EQ in a robot class. Turns out I somehow fit it in on this one. So
dust off those old books, pull them off the bookshelf.
Yeah, how many people were doing that? But, you know, really, it drove that process of just use what you need, just show what you need, and make it easy to use. And I think in the last, you know, years with the Brooks and the Precise and working with that robot so much, it is very easy to optimize when you don't have a teach pen. You know, because you don't have this like, oh, don't pay no attention to this half of this box. That's impossible, right? You can't just tell somebody to do that. It's unnecessary. But when you don't have one, and you can just say, well, no, pull up this feature in the API that you want to show up in your software, you can do that. And I think I know for a fact in the scheduling software business that's also very attractive, because sometimes you just want to scan a barcode, select a type, and then run. That's it. Yeah. You know, and you have a screen that just does that at the end of the day. You don't have, look at all the drop downs you have. You know, look at all the, you know, you don't necessarily need it.
Well, but, I had a customer just the other day asking about the I/O on your robots, and I was like, we have the command. It was in the API, get or set, there. Whatever it is. If you want to set it, let's pull that command out, and then you can set whatever I/O that's connected to. I said, that might actually work. Let's see how this works. But it's not part of our standard set in the common activities. But you can pull it out and use it for their benefit. So
if you want. Yeah.
No, but that's a good point. I think that's the furthest we've come in this field, is like optimizing for what you're trying to do rather than throwing like the kitchen sink and everything at someone, right? I remember the first robots you played with, there was like 5 screens just to tell it like you want it to go 0.5 millimeters above the bottom of the well. And then you have to back out 5 screens to give it all the other commands.
You remember that? Sura, you must remember the Stavely teach pendant tree.
Oh my gosh, yeah, crawling around in that. Yes.
I did the alpha testing on that interface.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I just apologize now.
You're at fault.
Plus, minus, minus, plus.
I feel like ReadySoft had the biggest headache of how do I use that teach pendant to integrate it into my scheduling software. We had a lot of conversations about that.
Yeah,
approach plate by 10 millimeters, but at what angle? Ooh,
yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Well, And more episodes to come on standardization. I have no doubt, or it's gonna be a topic that comes up.
And in different forms, right? Because there's also like workflow standardization that might be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In this episode, we really came at it from the kind of device side, a space where we spend a lot of our time. I think there's a great point what you brought up about, some vendors they do give you the kitchen sink, but as a designer and when you're engineering a solution, that is fantastic to be able to have access to all that stuff when you need it and not have to go, hack things. And by the way, as we move into our Picks of the Week segment, lead in, tips, tricks, and hacks can also be Picks of the Week, right? So if you do have one of those, we can put something together. But just going off of the WhatsApp chat, I got to know, Jeff.
Seriously, I'm dying to know.
I can't wait. I got to know.
Okay, all right. This is not automation of any kind, but it's off the grid, okay? I've had this little device. Yeah, if if an EMP happens, you're screwed anyway.
Go gadget.
But if you go off the grid for a little while, I had this for a while, and it's a ball door, basically. Little thing here. Let me turn this on. So you can do cigarette lighter. You've got all sorts of USBs here. You've got
from
110.
The 1930s.
You got 110.
You could.
You got a flashlight.
It's got an inverter in it. Yeah.
Got a flashlight. Pretty cool. But okay, so this is just a massive battery pack for doing stuff. However, we bought this in combination. I've got this other thing right here.
The link will be in the description below.
That's right.
Affiliate links. No, I'm sorry. But
show notes to include.
We bought this.
Oh, solar charging. There we go.
From Jackery, which can plug right into this unit, and you can charge it from the sun. Plug your phone in at the same time, or light your cigarettes if you wish, because it has a cigarette lighter.
How does it plug in? So, how does the solar panel plug into the unit?
There's a larger plug right here. So that's where you plug in the AC, but on the solar cell you can plug that in there too.
Okay.
So
yeah,
I thought that was pretty cool.
That's handy.
You got DC unit here. So it's kind of cool. Well, actually, there's DC over here. So next to this, you've got DC in. So when you're on the solar cell, you'd have plug in here, I'm assuming. So, but yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. We use this going camping. Charging phones overnight, playing music, whatever. So that's my gadget.
Will find it useful, Jeff.
Yeah, the solar panel. I like that idea to be able to have that. And that's something I could fit in the car too.
Yeah.
I definitely want links to those though. I want to check them out.
Okay. Well, I forget if we got it on Amazon or whatever, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're gonna do a show notes section. Each episode we're gonna add a little bit to it and tweak it and tune it. And so I've got now a thing in the Spotify podcast tool where you can add show notes and things like that as part of, it'd be pretty easy. It's just a few things kind of cover the topics that we're talking about in the episode, but as well put in links in the show notes to be able to talk about this stuff. Because we're not doing like a live image. I know some podcasts, they're actually got a screen they pop up. And we might get there.
But if we're gonna keep
when we're on YouTube.
Yeah,
exactly. We're on YouTube. I'm gonna get a screen capture tool. And we're gonna show that right up there.
If we're gonna keep
I'm gonna be live broadcasting the website as I'm talking.
But if we're gonna keep with the standardization theme, let's go back to my little device. Standard USB, standard USB-C, all standards right here. Okay.
Right there, and impressively, the cigarette lighter has remained a standard longer than I've been alive.
It comes
I'm
standard.
Yeah.
No smoking, but
and 110 a standard with a ground. It's all standardized.
Yeah. No, I bought. This was brand new. You think the Apple Store, they really curate their selection, right? They still carry a cigarette lighter adapter with USB-C.
Wow.
There you go. 2 USB-C ports, and they're still carrying. And it's the fanciest cigarette lighter. I mean, this looks like something out of a modern art museum, right?
Apple's gone from computers to nothing but accessories, and they're making $1 billion off of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't walk out the door just buying one Apple device. That's not going to happen.
I'm going to need that MacBook Pro and 10 charge cords because I'm going to lose 9 of them before I walk out of here.
Yeah. Who wants to go next? Anyone?
Sura, do you have something?
I don't have anything this week. I'm still not in the mind to remember the pick of the week. I'm so sorry.
Something during the week that was just like, aha, I need to use that more often. Could be like I don't know, code hack or something.
I've got a second one if you want it. This is brand new this week.
The what of the week?
I got another. Hold on.
Is this?
Jeff has more.
Okay. So, if we're
I'm down there.
if we're gonna go all
Car battery.
no, if we're okay, I've kind of gotten more into holistic health, chiropractic medicine. My wife is doing some acupuncture for some sciatic nerve pain. We're trying different things as opposed to the standard issue American medical system, and it's working. But one of the things that we just got this week is a grounding mat. So, okay. And I was like, yeah, that's all hokey. I'm not that crunchy, whatever. But I was like, okay, I don't feel anything. My middle daughter thinks, but what does it do, Dad? I'm like, it doesn't vibrate. It doesn't shock you. It doesn't do any of this. She can't wrap her head around it. And I'm like, well, I can't explain it to you any better, except I said, when you get an electrical charge in the wintertime, and then you touch the door handle, boom, you're now discharged. That's exactly what this is supposed to do. But this is new. It's sitting under my desk. But that's my new tech.
All right.
Which is not real tech at all.
The grounding mat.
You are
Like that one.
grounded.
I'm at
Grounded
peace.
now. That's why all the good ideas come from. Now that you say it, Jeff,
My
Now we
secret's
know.
out.
the secret's out. You were
Elizabeth,
asking what is he doing?
are you gonna share your green smoothie recipe?
Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
Yeah,
I
you got to do it. You got to do it.
it's just celery. Don't worry. But I drank a glass of celery juice.
Forget it.
I know Jeff cannot understand why I
I'm
do
out.
that
I
to
just had a
myself.
boba tea. I'm out. I can't even. If I start thinking about celery, that was
I know.
€5 down the
I
drain.
know. Jeff always tells me that I'm crazy.
It
Why do I
looks
do that to myself?
horrible.
It tastes horrible.
It's
but
like a
Yeah,
thick
it
green
does.
smoothie.
This doesn't sound like
you know.
endorsement.
No, not
Makes
at
you
all.
feel good.
it makes you feel good, I have to say.
Now,
Recipes
I might
below.
go for it. Yeah, I might go for it if you did it like ants on a log with some peanut butter and raisins. I might go for it then. Mix all that up. At least there's something
Oh,
else in there.
celery with peanut butter isn't bad, actually.
It's actually really good.
I don't know if I. Okay.
I think it's an American thing, right?
Throw some protein on it. There you go.
Throw some protein on it is definitely an American thing.
Yeah.
That's for sure. It's
Protein for everything.
Would you like a protein with that, sir?
Where's the meat?
Guacamole's extra. All right, so my pick of the week is the device that actually I ended up putting a little charge on the phone. Right now, you can always tell when Apple's about to replace stuff. They're going to phase certain products out, and the product that is definitely highest up the list as far as getting replaced is the iPad Mini. You can get this thing, and I picked this one up. It's the smallest memory, 64 gigabytes, but you can get this thing for practically a third off the price, if not maybe a little bit more, just because you could tell they're trying to get rid of inventory on the current iPad Mini. But it's got USB-C out, and this USB-C can be used with a USB-C charging cable for the phone to charge the phone up with whatever battery was left over in this thing. And so it can also work as a backup, save the podcast recording session device as
cool.
well. So that wasn't even an intended use.
Nice.
But turned out, my going on 2-year-old phone, the battery doesn't last like it used to, and I didn't fully charge it up before we started recording today. But yeah, this is the Mini. You get a 5 gigabit USB-C 3.2 by 2 by 1, which I think is the 2 by 1 standard. So it's 5 gigabits. You can put memory sticks on this thing, access those directly. If it can open the file, if you find an app to open your file there. I operate on iPads 100% when I travel. There's no company PC with me. So I operate 100%. Not this iPad. I've got a Pro that I use for that. But I mean, this is like the perfect, take it to the gym, read a book. And you can get these things, they're a steal right now. And this thing's going to be supported by iOS versions coming out for the next few years at least. So you can get that much use out of it. So that's my pick of the week.
They're not
the
necessarily
current
doing away with
generation,
the
soon to be
platform.
the previous generation iPad mini.
Are they doing away with the Mini platform, or is it just kind of a next gen?
Jeff, now the Mini has a very loyal following. I cannot imagine that they would kill off the Mini platform. However, that is always a possibility. The cards are invisible to anyone outside the spaceship building down in Cupertino.
Yeah.
So we don't know anything until it gets announced.
I mean,
but
we
that
thought
is a
they-
possibility. Actually, they could kill it off.
We thought they would never get rid of the scroll wheel on the what was it called? The iPod.
I did. I knew that was. Oh, come on!
Yeah,
You thought
I
that
knew
was
that
going
was going to be
to.
gone.
Yeah, I know.
A mechanical click wheel? Are you kidding
But-
me? Gonna...
But
Hey,
the
now
button-
available on Pipette Mins. Did you notice that?
Oh.
But the button on the
Yeah.
phone, okay. I was like, all right, well, when they did this, funny story, student I used to teach at the school, her dad got a new one. He had the old button on his phone, switched over to the full screen, so there's no button anymore. He couldn't figure it out. He gave it to her and said, I can't figure this out, because he wanted to hit the home button all the time.
Sweet! I got a phone.
Yeah,
Somebody scored on that deal.
right.
Yeah. They're changing the buttons and they're changing how you use it. I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, how long? Like everybody was worried when they got rid of the button. Like how many people ultimately struggle with it? Not very many. Like the whole swipe up and shift over. I mean, they really put a lot of time into it to make it so intuitive that most people would pick it up over time. But,
Well-
yeah, they also got rid of the headphone port. I think that pissed off more people
Yeah.
than getting rid of the home button. The fact that, wait a minute, I can either charge or I can use my wired headphones that I paid hundreds of dollars for.
With an adapter.
That are
Yeah.
with an adapter which has an analog to digital converter that is often, or digital analog converter that's just often subpar anyway. So yeah, the fact that that's happened is, I think people are still trying to wrap their head around it. The fact that these headphones, which were designed to be wireless, still have a little 2.5 millimeter jack with a 3.5 millimeter cable, so I can use them in the airplane, because there's no way you're going to use Bluetooth with something in the airplane,
Right.
unless you use the gadget, which I might show next week. It's sitting in the bag.
I mean, you never know.
Device that could solve that problem.
You know how many National Transportation Safety Board accidents have brought down airplanes with Bluetooth signal? Me neither. I don't know.
Right.
That's
Same
a
thing.
whole other
Must
podcast. Useless
turn
rules
off your
and
transmission.
laws.
Useless rules. Useless technology rules. Mark that down, Mike.
Useless technology rules.
It's all going to be
well-
about airplanes.
I think we might have a title. If you think about it, it kind of covers it pretty well.
Wow, way to end it. Boom, mic drop.
Give me that hammer. Hammer down.
That needs to be our ending thing. The hammer breaking the screen.
We need a gavel. We need a gavel. The Brew Crew out.
That's right. Brew Crew out. And, I think with that we can wrap up. We're slightly longer than our last session, but that's fine. And thank everyone for joining us on episode 2, possibly named that. We'll see. Yeah, episode number 2. We are. We'll do an episode 3 and 4 and 5 and so on and so forth. You can pick us up on iTunes and Spotify. We look forward to seeing you on the next podcast for the Helical Brew. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a great one.